A technology war between two economic superpowers has threatened to split the world into two.
Which country will be the leader of the next generation of technologies and reap all the economic benefits from being that leader?
Who will win this nationalistic fight for technological supremacy and dominance? Will countries across the globe be forced to take sides? China's telecommunications giant Huawei is among a few technology companies which are caught between these two feuding economic powerhouses. It has been viewed as a national security threat by the US security agencies and banned from buying or acquiring American parts and technologies.
I do think Huawei does pose a potential security threat that the US officials are right to take seriously. We know that Huawei has a very close relationship with the Chinese government. This is an inescapable fact of Chinese companies. They are required to have a Communist Party presence, and they are accountable to the Chinese government.
But other analysts say the issue has been completely blown out of proportion. They believe that the US is targeting Huawei purely for commercial reasons. Huawei is now the largest telecom company in the world. It has even overtaken Apple as the world's second largest smartphone provider. It has also emerged as the world leader of telecom equipment, including 5G technology communications, seen as the next milestone in the digital revolution. The race to install 5G mobile networks reflects this growing rivalry between China and the US, one that will determine political and economic fortunes of nations for many decades to come.
If you look at the 5G development, all the communication technologies or products, you will only see pretty much a few names like Huawei, ZTE, Ericsson, Nokia, and Samsung. So there is no US company inside.
Huawei works with a broad range of US suppliers for its products, including chip makers such as Intel and Qualcomm, as well as Google for its Android operating system. The restrictions imposed on Huawei mean that it will lose access to critical products and services from these companies. For example, Google has now confirmed that the next flagship Huawei phone will not have licensed Google apps. These restrictions would cost its consumer business about $10 billion in revenue growth. This has now forced the Chinese tech giant to move towards self-sufficiency by developing its own in-house software or operating system to replace Google's Android. The technology breakup may now lay the foundation for an economic decoupling between the US and China, splitting the world along a lasting digital divide, known as the Digital Iron Curtain.
In some areas, the world is already splintered. For example, in the technological sphere, the mainland Chinese, they don't use WhatsApp, they use WeChat, and they use their own version of Twitter, etc., right? May not necessarily be bad, because I personally believe that the world is big enough for a lot of these things to actually happen.
You may actually have to carry two phones for a while to go to different countries, like what we are experiencing when we are using 3Gs.
On many counts, China is not yet a technology superpower. The Economist Intelligence Unit, for example, doesn't even rank China in its top 10 list of countries best suited for technological innovation. But China has already proven that miracles are not impossible.
If you obstruct them from some of the key technologies right now, it will just basically spur them to actually spend more on R&D and to innovate even faster pace. And we all know anecdotally how hungry, how keen they are to actually develop their own core technologies. So they will just basically speed up the process. You might be able to delay them for a couple of years, but you can't stop them at the end of the day.
And the US remains particularly vulnerable in one area of the tech war: the supply of rare earths. Rare earth elements are used in a wide range of consumer electronics, including iPhones, electric car motors, military jet engines, satellites, TV monitors, and lasers. China today dominates the world's rare earth output, accounting for over 70% of the world's supply. The continuing trade tensions could force Beijing to block the sale of rare earth elements to the US, like it did against Japan in 2010, following a territorial dispute over the Senkaku Islands.
It would certainly be extremely disruptive to large aspects of the economy, and so I wouldn't begin to be able to estimate the scale or the duration of how that would play out.
The fear is the technology Cold War between China and the US could lead to the creation of a bipolar world. It's one where separate digital policies and standards will divide the Chinese and US spheres of influence, splitting the supply chains and technology stack. Will countries in Asia end up having to choose sides between Team China or Team America?
Hopefully we don't get into a situation where we have to choose between the US or China. But as things stand, I think it is inevitable that you probably will have to choose between one and the other, sooner or later.
I think they need each other quite badly. I mean, no doubt US, they are the technology leader, but you need to have a manufacturing base, and China provide a very conducive place for you to manufacture.
China's promotion of the Belt and Road Initiative carries a possibility that the Chinese will demand, as a consequence of the bestowal of financing and lots of investment, they may ask in return that these countries buy into the Chinese technological ecosystem.
If you have a population of 1.4 billion people who are highly entrepreneurial, who are basically your neighbors, you have no choice. You will be drawn within that sphere. How many other big centers of influence are there in the world today? What I'm trying to say is that perhaps the choice will be made for you. You don't even have to choose it at the end of the day.
This is a period when there's about as much fear of the future as there's ever been.